Some of us on the screen here are one skill set, maybe two, away from the double and the triple one. Why most entrepreneurs fail. It's gonna start off kind of like on a negative front in the video. But what I'm doing with that is I'm gonna talk a little bit about momentum. I think, and you guys have heard me scream about this over and over and over again, that what gets in the way most of the time, and then I'll talk about momentum. There's just 3 steps if you're taking notes. Earlier today, I mentioned this piece before I do momentum, and that was, he said, what's the biggest roadblocks? He thought I was gonna say some skill set or the market or interest rates. And I said, it's just expectations. That's it. And he kind of was like silent. It's the 3 to 7 year thing, guys. It's not freaking easy. It's not easy. No matter how you twist it. And I know this has been coming up a lot, and so it's good timing. And I have been planning on talking about this for a few weeks now. As a result, most people don't catch the momentum. That's my whole point of starting with the time. They don't catch it. You just don't stick with it long enough. You can't catch it if you're not sticking with it long enough. So 3 things, if you guys are taking notes. I want to talk about how to get it for us, right? Then how to maintain, but then how to explode momentum in any market. So how to get it, toughest. How to maintain, not so tough. How to explode, next level. So I go quickly, but this call, if you guys haven't been on, will be posted in the High Six channel, okay? Not to be shared, obviously. All right, the reason I said it's the toughest to get it is it takes heavy lifting, right? And all I can relate to, because some of you guys haven't heard the stories, all I can relate to is when I started in 12, 13-ish. And the only one that was around for that was Nick, and that was awful because I started with, I don't know how many, probably a couple million, literally not on paper, a couple million in debt, 1-bedroom apartment, the whole bit. So on top of, okay, the business is different, the business is hard, the business is new for me. Okay, I got all this crap behind me too. So that's why I said it's a lot of heavy lifting. So we got to set the right expectations. And I wrote in my notes here, 30 to 365 days. That's what I wrote, 30 to 365. Because I say things on podcasts sometimes, and I realize that a lot of it doesn't get translated to you guys. And I say this all the time on shows. It literally is that difference in time to a first deal, 30 to 365 days. And usually it has zero to do with skill set, to be honest with you. Sometimes it does, but most of the time it's what we bring to the table, the baggage, the good, the bad, and otherwise. It's what we bring to the table. I brought to the table a boatload of crap and debt and the crash and everything else. Other people bring other things, but we all bring something, right? So that's what dictates how fast or slow we go. And I'm gonna talk about how you can shed some of that in a minute. But what becomes important is, and you guys all have it here, so it's different when I wanna show, but what becomes important is the resources, the people, like this is so important, the people here, and the tools and everything that we offer. However, last week this came up after I did my notes on this, and that is, we have all this stuff, but all of us, and me included, all of us are not utilizing every person and every tool we have. We're not. I think there's very few exceptions to that in life, never mind in this community, right? Example is, I was talking to Brian, I think it was last week, Brian, maybe a week before. And I'm like, okay, well, I went into QLS because I'm redoing the entire QLS course. Like I'm going through every module, every video. And I'm going, oh, that's in there. Oh, that's in there. Because questions that come up during the week, and I started to doubt myself whether it was in QLS. So it's all there. We're just not utilizing it enough. So in this early stage of ramp up, it's utilizing and obsessing over every piece we can that we already have our fingers on. We're just not utilizing. Next, I wrote massive action. I'm going to go way back to the Michael Jordan quote, but I used to write his quote all the time, repetitious boredom. Like I'd be calling, bored to tears, dialing with a double headset. That's how many calls I'd make. And I'd be writing repetitious boredom. It was just so boring to do that. But it got the momentum going. It was pushing that boulder up the hill. It was critical as I look back to feed the funnel. When I say massive action, the phone thing, let me just mention a few things within this massive action piece here. The item of scheduling, this is still plaguing a lot of you guys, and it hits my schedule too. So I'm not immune to it. And that is, when you have a phone appointment, to take massive action, to be super laser focused, and to be obsessed over getting the best you can. You can't let things distract you. I'm gonna talk about that in a grand scale in a second, but when you're on the phone, it's gotta be like, who's been to the doctor in the last 2 weeks? Good, regular, good, bad, or otherwise. Who's been to the doctor? Raise your hand. Maybe in the last 6 months. Okay, more of you. Mm-hmm. You probably wouldn't have thought of missing it, correct? You just don't. Like I had to go get blood drawn today for my annual. I wasn't gonna miss it. It's my annual. You go get the blood and you're done. So with the appointment to prospect, you can't let anything, including family, friends, etc., get in the way of it. when I used to prospect, Nick was young, and we won't tell the funny story, Nick. Someday we will tell the story where you tried to distract me intently. But I used to put a sign on my door, even for family. And then when I was at the office, I'd put it on the office so people would come up and go, oh, he's tied up from that time to that time. Whatever you got to do to protect that special time for you to make calls, or you can't catch the momentum. You can't get after massive action. The only other thing I'll say about prospecting before I go into like that appointment time, before I go into the next stage here, which is maintaining, is this. You want to make sure that on your tracking thing, Brian brought this up in a couple of his rants, and all this effort is for naught if you don't do that. And this should be basic repeat, but it's not for a lot of us. It's not, or else everybody would be in a different spot right now. I will say, when you book, here's how I do my day. If I had all day, I know you guys don't have all day, but take this in a half day increment or take it in a 3-hour increment, whatever all day is for you with real estate. I would book mornings for calls and afternoons for appointments, just real vanilla speaking. And if I didn't have appointments, I'd be back on the phone. That's how much boredom and repetitious boredom and calls I would do. And now we just handpick the calls. But back then, to get the thing going, to get the momentum up, to get the boulder up, that's what was necessary. If that gives you some context. All right, so stage 2, maintaining. And I'll take a breath at the end if we have any questions before others comment here. The maintaining pieces gets a little bit more fun. Some of you mentioned in your positive focus who you are hiring. So I'll pick on Rick here in a good way. Rick, I wrote in my notes, remove some of you. And you're doing that, like you're starting the transition as you get out of your JOB. And a couple other people said they were hiring VAs or EAs. That's what I mean by removing a little bit more of you. And then because you had your hands on like all this other stuff, all these months or years or weeks, depending on how long you've been with us, because you had your fingers on all that, then we got to make that smooth now, right? We've been kind of like what I called stacking. We got to kind of smooth things out and be obsessed with smoothing it out. And that means at the end of the day or the end of the week, however you operate in a journal, you're writing people, resources, things that you can trim, change, or call or act upon. That's what I mean by obsess. Like there's not a week that goes by and I even have a task in my Asana calendar and my Asana list that says, do I have any topics for Peter Taunton this week? On a Saturday that shows up and I either delete the appointment that I have with him for the following week or I give him an agenda of things I want to talk about. And it's rare for me not to have something to talk about. Just like Brian sends me his 3 items every week, not almost every week. There's something we can talk about. You guys should be doing that too. That's what I mean by obsess, okay? The explode piece is interesting. I want to give you more of a vision on this. We are at a point, my wife Kim said to me last night, how many properties you at now? And how many properties were we at during COVID? We had like almost 70 properties during COVID, 70 that we had in some shape, form, or fashion owned or controlled under terms. And so that might seem hard to believe, but it happens like that when you get the momentum going, and then you have options. What do I mean by options? Well, if you can remove you a little bit more, like Brian is doing such a good job with, you can run and cash flow that thing. Just cash flow it, cash flow, and create an even better lifestyle. Go play more, go do whatever you want to do. But you have that option. You also have the option, I don't know if you guys have thought about this, but you also have the option of selling. You have the option of selling. When I had the brokerage in 95, I bought it. And I said to everyone I talked to, I'm going to sell it in 5 years. 99.9% of people said, you can't sell that. You don't sell a brokerage. There's no such thing. It's just you. Well, I intently said it, built it, and sold it. So that, unlike the crash, wasn't a bad experience. It was a great experience. You guys can do that with this. You take Brian's team or Rick's team and you clone that. That's a business that can, and someday should, be sold or in some other way pieced off. Think about that. When we had 70 properties, could we have sold off half of that at a really good chunk? Yeah, we could have. We didn't. But I'm just giving you visions for whatever it is for you, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Doesn't matter. There's no wrong answer. Just know that there's an end game here in place. Aside from your why, I'm just giving you a business thing. There's an end game in place. The punchline is this. I don't think, I've said this at a lot of events, we all think big enough. That's the only thing that's not getting us there quicker. The emotional part of the why, many of you raised your hands and sent me your whys. I hope it was helpful to do the exercise. If you haven't, you still can. But at the VIP day, I said to do that because aside from thinking bigger, the emotional why is the only other thing that I think can get you there and jump over many hoops. Skip many hoops. Get up the hill faster. Get the momentum. Get it quicker so you can explode it down the road. Let me go back to that stacking thing and then I'll take a breath. So I said, okay, you got all these things, you got all these resources and you stack. And I've always said, keep stacking, right? Then I realized the more I see this, we can get cloudy. We can stack, but we got to once in a while stop and like clean the weeds out, do we not? Because we stack, and you only have so much time. You only have so much brain bandwidth. You only have so much everything. So a thought is, I think Brian Tracy calls it zero-sum thinking or zero-sum activities, but it's stopping, write this acronym down actually. It's stopping and knowing what I now know is what I want you to think about. And the acronym is just KWINK, 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 KWINK. Knowing what I now know, what can I drop? What can I stop doing? Can I get rid of? Knowing what I now know. This would not be a bad exercise. We do it trimestrally. This would not be a bad exercise to do quarterly or trimestrally. I would encourage it. Peter, I think on this Zoom, Peter Golming's the only one that was in that meeting, but it's quite a process to go through to stop and do that. So think about that. Zero-based activities, zero-based decisions. What can I strip to make it a stronger run for momentum? Here's a question for you on this note. I keep saying I'll stop after this. Raise your hand if realistically between now and the end of 24, not 23, you'd like to double or triple your income. Just raise your hand on the screen. Okay, and the reason I ask is we have team members that it's not all about the income on our team. Okay, so here's the question, why hasn't it happened yet? Couple volunteers, why hasn't it happened yet? And then I have some thoughts for you that I hope will put you in action a little bit more than just the real estate stuff.
Because I'm in the way. I'm in the way of the business, period.
Okay, great. Who else? No wrong answer, Kyle.
I think I'm still growing my skill set and getting better.
All right, I not here, but I would dig deeper in that, Kyle. Great. I would dig deeper in that and saying, what's stopping you from doing it faster? That's what I would say. And then I'm going to give you some thoughts on that in a minute. Let's take a couple more. I'm just curious what comes out. What else is, what are the other reasons we wouldn't be doubling or tripling already?
I think we put financial values on us, and then we can't exceed them because we think that's what we're worth.
Yeah, whether conscious or not, right? Big time. We're going to spend a better part of a half a day with the chairmans with a mindset person in the room, and I'm sure it's going to come up. It can't not come up. Steve, spot on. Let's do another one. Who else? Well, another thought.
Limiting beliefs.
So interesting. All this is mindset, right? So far, it's the mindset pill. It's not necessarily the skill set. Although Kyle brought up skill set, we had one had skill set. So you guys have heard of the constraint theory, I'm sure. Sandra, sorry.
I think it's always prioritizing. What is the priority? And I've had other priorities that were people versus business or money that had to be addressed and ready to go.
Yep. We all have, that's sort of what I said earlier, right? We all have our stuff we bring to the table, good, bad, or otherwise. We just have it. So theory of constraints. If you haven't heard it or heard someone present it, I'm just going to give a couple of sentences on it, but write down theory of constraints. Dan Ralphs did this it was like 2 hours once. And he also did it maybe on one of the old high six calls where he draws the farmer and the pipes and he has this whole cartoon drawn out. But here's the long and the short of it. If you think about where you are now, and let's just use that double or triple the income. We're just doing the financial as an example. It could be anything, right? There's constraints somewhere in that path, or there's at least one that's slowing you down. Or let's use Kyle's thing. There's a constraint that's perhaps maybe slowing down his fast path to getting the skill set on overdrive. I don't know. I'm just using that as an example. But there's constraints. And usually the number one constraint is distractions. Sandra kind of nailed it. Is distractions. Imagine that. For everyone, number one, when people are pulled. So what does that mean? Usually we can fix or solve this situation as constraint with a skill set, Kyle, to your point, or self-discipline issue. It's one or the other. So then I start thinking, why in this community in particular, forget in theory now, why in particular do I think that can be a challenge? Because the skill set piece in any industry, but let's talk about this. The skill set piece causes what? Or can cause what? Fear, embarrassment, failure, you name it. So then we kind of don't do that skill set as fast, or we don't do it at all, right? You guys tracking with me?
Mm-hmm.
So number one constraint, definitely an issue of distractions. And if the number one constraint is distractions, and that we know two things that can really fix that would be self-discipline and skill sets. Let's just be conscious of that as we make our decisions next week, to Sandra's point, when all the stuff comes in and wants to get in your way. Because here's the thing, here's my whole punchline on this. One, literally, some of us on the screen here are one skill set, maybe two, away from the double and the triple.